The next thing would be putting together the pieces of the top. There's a guide here. There's a 1-inch guide and it shows you 1 inch. So you can just take your tape measure and measure to make sure that this is actually an inch. If it is not an inch, I am going to suggest that you reprint it until it is. That way you know that you'll have the right dimensions for your dress. Under that 1 inch key, there's another kind of key or guide, and it has a bunch of lines with different sizes. We're gonna go to the line 6, and we can see that it is basically an orange dashed and dotted line. That means that everywhere on this pattern, right now it just looks like a bunch of lines, but we're gonna find the line that's orange and dotted, which is here, and we're gonna basically cut out or trace along this line. So that's what this key is for. And these are the black dots that will match up. So this is the top piece. This dot will match up with this dot. You'll need some tape. Tape it together first and then cut it. That way nothing shifts. If you don't want to cut this pattern, you can use some tracing paper. Still, you will piece this together and you will take your tracing paper, put it on top of your fabric and under the dress, and then just trace right along it with your tracing wheel. If you don't have a tracing wheel, pretty much you can use a skewer, an ink pen, and trace along the line that you want to cut it out. Whichever method you feel comfortable with, go ahead and do it. Again, the front has 4 pieces, well, 3 pieces, sorry. You're gonna match all the dots up together. Once it's all matched up together and you've chosen your size, our size is a size 6, you're going to cut your fabric out. It says cut 2 of these in opposite directions. If your fabric is folded in half, you're automatically going to cut 2 in opposite directions. If you're going to be using these fabric squares, I'll have to cut out 1 pattern piece this way, and then the easiest way to ensure that it is cut out correctly is to take my pattern piece, it will be attached, and flip it over and go to another section of fabric and cut it out this way. And the back goes together with the same, in the same type of manner, matching the dots, the 2 black dots to the other 2 black dots, cutting it out. This one tells you to cut it on the fold. That does mean to line up this line here on the fold, and cut out the dashed and dotted orange line of the size 6 and cutting it. So the first thing it tells us to do is to sew the bodice together at the shoulder. If you notice, my bias trim this time is smaller because I am going to be using the 1/4 inch seam allowances. I went ahead and made a double folded bias trim to be a 1/4 inch. That way I know that when I'm sewing on top of this, I am sewing on in the correct seam allowances that is called for this dress. Some people were saying they didn't have a sewing machine and they wanted to try and make a dress. If you're doing this by hand, you can sew simply in a straight stitch along any of the seams that we're doing and come out with very similar results as the one with the machine. One of the techniques that we're doing for another dress will have some hand stitching in there, and so I'll be going over just some type of hand finishing and hand stitching techniques then, but all of the dresses that we are doing are doable. So now I've attached the bias tape around all of the edges, around the neck and the arms, and I'm gonna just press it first. And then after it has been pressed, we're going to take it, making the right sides face each other, and we're going to end up sewing down the side seams. So you should have 3 pieces for each side. You'll have the back, the front, and then the crossover. And all 3 of those should line up at the bottom, along the bottom edge. Pin this in place to make sure that all of the edges stay together. They won't all match up at the top because the crossing piece is a little bit lower. So pin those at the edges. We're going to also attach bias tape here to finish off these side seams. So now I have the top piece completed and all the trimming is done. I pressed it a little bit and I have the bottom part as well. I'm going to get ready to gather the skirt so that I can put the two together. And then after then, it's just doing the hem, and then we'll be all done. A quick tip for gathering is to gather by finding first the bobbin thread, and you're going to pull on that gently. It'll loosen up your stitches. Because you have a long way to go and this is cotton, I do suggest you take your time and go slowly. I just put my gathers in, and now it's time to attach the bodice to the skirt. I actually added decorative bias tape to the binding of to the bottom of the bodice, and I want that to show, just like the rest of the bias tape that I did in the skirt and along the top. I actually want mine to show. So I'm going to attach my skirt a little bit differently. I'm going to take my skirt, matching up the seams, and just lay it right on top of those gathering stitches, and I'm going to stitch down all the way around. Now, for those of you who are following the pattern correctly, turn my bodice inside out so the wrong side is facing, and my skirt will remain right sides in. So I'm gonna go to find that center back seam that I stitched up, and I'm gonna find the center of the bodice by matching the two sides together. When I pull it out, that's gonna be my center back. Likewise, when I pull it to the front, that'll be my center front. So I'm gonna put a little crease there too, so that I know where my skirt attaches to. And you're going to put the skirt on the inside of the bodice through the neck hole. The gathers all around to make sure that your gathers are evenly spaced. And you're going to continue to pin all the way around in your skirt. Then, once yours is pinned and you've sewn it down, you've sewn yours down, you're gonna flip it back outwards, and there you will have your dress.